Okay, cool. So I just wanted to mention to the people at home too, I mean, you're probably already acutely aware of this, but the course is chugging along here, and we have only, well, including today, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days left in the course, which is crazy. We have, including today, 4 days left in this block. So today's the second last day of plants. Tomorrow or Monday will be the last day of plants, where we'll sort of finish off our last little topic. We're going to talk about the reproductive cycle of plants tomorrow in a little bit more detail, and then we're going to do our final project for the plants unit, which to be determined. I'll get back to you on how that's going to work. And then we're going to do a little quiz on all the plant stuff that you've covered so far. And then we're going to have 2 days of evolution. So that'll be Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. And then you're going to be gone for 2 weeks in your other course. And then when you come back, we're going to have 2 more days and then we're done. And the course is done. So it's just probably important to keep in mind that this is like a really quick turnaround of everything. So most people are getting their assignments in relatively on time. You know, like for example, like people are going to get stuff in by the end of Friday today. I had a lot of people talk to me about that for their medical technology assignment. No problem, no big deal. I'm going to mark it on the weekend anyway. I don't care. But just as a heads up to you, when we get right towards the end of the semester and we're in those like final couple days, like I have to mark your stuff on that last day. So like we're gonna do a project on an evolution project. I'll try and keep it quite simple so that it's not like some onerous thing that you have to do on the last day of class. But we do have to do some kind of summative thing on that day, and I have to mark it that day because I have to then prepare your report cards like in the next 1 or 2 days, and then that's it. Then semester over, and we start the next one. So or quadmester, whatever. So it's like a very tight turnaround time. So try not to let things kind of slip and be like, oh, I need a few more days. Because when you get towards the end of the quadmester, you're like, there isn't a few more days, like they don't exist. I have to submit your marks pretty much right away when the quadmester ends. It's a very unusual situation that we're operating on here. So I just want to make sure everybody was aware of that. Like, do your best to try and kind of stay on the timelines here because it's very easy to get behind with how quickly we're moving. Okay, that being said, let's quickly talk about what we're going to do today. It's second last day of plants. Mostly you guys are going to be working independently again today, but let me throw it up on the screen here so you can see it. Can you guys see that? Is that visible? Yeah. People at home, is it working? Yeah, okay, all right. Oh, uh-oh, it's going wonky. So today's day 17. I got a little, so the basic topics that we're going to talk about today are transport in plants. We've talked about the anatomy of transport. So like what are those vessels that are moving stuff around inside the plants, the xylem and the phloem tissue, and where they're located in the leaves, the stems and the roots. But we haven't really talked about how the actual process works. So like how does a plant get sugar from the leaf where it's made into wherever it's storing it, in the root or in the stem? And how does water get from the ground all the way up to the leaf in order to be used for photosynthesis? So like we know about the structures, but not really about how it gets there. So this lesson is all about like how is the actual transportation mechanism happening in plants. It's completely different than animals. So in animals, when we discuss this together, you have a pump. You have like a centralized location that keeps everything in motion. It creates a pressure differential that moves fluids around on the inside. Obviously plants don't have hearts. This probably isn't coming as a surprise to anybody. So the pumping has to occur almost on like a cellular basis. That's for the sugar component. And then for the other part, for the water component, there is a really unique system that plants use to transport water from the roots to the leaves. So I've got this little introductory video here that talks about the physics behind that. It's a Veritasium video. I don't know if anybody knows that channel. It's a great YouTube channel. And it really is an amazing like sort of manipulation of physics that plants use to pump water. It's really cool. Anyway, this video goes over how that works. And I highly recommend it. Fantastic video. I learned a lot the first time I watched this too, because I wasn't really, I don't think I really understood how transpiration worked until I watched this, and it does an excellent job of explaining how transpiration works. So I wish I would have had this video when I was in university when taking botany. That would have been amazing. Anyway, And then there's like a little lesson to go along with it here. I'm going to talk about on the physiological level in the cells, how are they actually pumping these things? So what is the structure of each xylem cell? What is the structure of each phloem cell? And how is it going to be pumping these materials around and up and down through the pipes? Okay? So that's that right there. There are a few analysis questions from the textbook and a little exit quiz to test your knowledge at the end. Again, if you're doing the exit quiz and you're like, I don't get this, I don't understand why that's the answer, talk to me. Talk to me. Very few people actually follow up with me if they don't do well on these things. I really highly recommend that you do that, okay? It's an opportunity for me to work together with you to help you figure out stuff that perhaps you didn't understand. Same thing, by the way, for the lessons. So I don't often hear back from too many people after the lessons, but I don't think everybody is necessarily 100% on everything that they're watching. If that's the case, like, let me know, okay, guys? Like, I'm happy to answer questions. I'm here to support you. But I will also say that if you're not into that and you don't want to talk to me, that's fine too. But you should maybe consider having a second look at the chapter that these are summarizing in the textbook. They're at the beginning of each note. It mentions which chapter it's from. And like, that source material is good. The textbook is excellent. We like very carefully went through a whole bunch of different textbook possibilities before we bought these. And this is by far the best textbook, or at least in my opinion it is, for this course. It really does a good job of explaining a lot of these concepts, and it follows the curriculum very closely. So again, I highly recommend it. Use it as a resource. If you'd like extra videos, you're looking for more information on a particular thing, I have extra videos for all this stuff. I don't put them up here because I think it's overwhelming. I'm not trying to put up 45 videos every day for you to watch, but I do have lots of extra stuff if you're interested in one of these particular concepts or you're not fully on board with one of these particular concepts. Okay, so please tell me. Okay, in Learning Block 2, but that's Learning Block 1. In Learning Block 2, we're going to take a look at flowers. Did anybody bring one? Anybody bring a flower? If you got one, it'd be really useful. We're going to pop outside and see if we can find some. I did see some yesterday when we did our little scavenger hunt. So there are some out there. Not many, obviously, at this time of the year. This is not a great time for plants to start getting their sexual reproduction on because we're right before they're potentially going to like drop leaves or whatever. But there are flowers out there. There are a few. So I'm going to grab a flower, hopefully. And hopefully you guys will be able to find one too if you didn't bring one from home. And we're going to take a look at the parts of that flower. So as you go through this little section down here, so you're supposed to read page 14 in your notes. It talks about the structures of a flower. Ideally, you're going to try and find all of those on your flower, the one that you have. Okay? Then you're going to read page 598 in your text. Sorry, it's page 14 in your course notes is what you start with, and it's 598 in the text. That's the part that goes over all the parts of a flower. And then there's a little documentary to watch here called How to Grow a Planet. This is episode 2 of 3. And it is an amazing documentary that talks about the evolution of flowers, so why plants have flowers, and basically why flowers are such an amazing and useful structure for plants. It sounds boring on the surface, I will admit to that. Botany was never one of my favorite things, but this is a really good documentary. My mom liked this documentary, so my mom doesn't care about botany at all, but it really is cool. It's an excellent documentary. It talks about things like why flowers have the colors that they have, what flowers look like to insects, which is completely different than the way that they look to humans, because a lot of insects, especially pollinators, have the ability to see into the ultraviolet part of the spectrum, and flowers look completely different if you can see the ultraviolet part of the spectrum, which is really cool. So they do some demonstrations of that. They talk about a lot of the different structures of flowers, how they co-evolved with their pollinators. Really cool stuff, guys. So it's a fantastic documentary. There's no question sheet or anything that goes with it. You won't need one, okay? It really is interesting enough to hold your attention, I promise. If you care about plants or you're interested in even vaguely, it's a really cool documentary, and it's also very recent. There's a couple questions from the text here that are about flowers, obviously, and then there's a little exit quiz for the second half as well, okay? So that's what you're working on in the second half. About half that time, you're probably going to want to use looking at your flower, if you could find one, and doing the part that's in your course notes, which is on page 14. And then, about the second half, you're probably going to want to leave for the flower documentary. It's a little less than an hour long. I think it's like 40 minutes long, but it's well worth that.
It's an hour exactly.
It's an hour exactly?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's longer than I thought it was. Okay. Any questions at all before we get started this stuff? Okay, so for the people at home, I'll pop back on here really quick at the beginning of block 2 and just mention that we're gonna head outside and start looking for flowers, and hopefully we'll be able to find some for the second half. All right, cool. I'll let you guys get to it then. Okay, guys. So hopefully at home you had an opportunity to go and grab some flowers. I think we got quite lucky here. There's quite a bit of variety. I'm gonna try something different. I saw it in the other room. iPad stand.
I like this one. This one's cool. I like yours too.
The camera on the iPad actually much better.
I only got one. Alright, here we go. Play Among Us during class.
I agree. I 100% agree.
Can we honestly do that?
No,
we
because actually didn't finish early the first part. Like,
Oh,
he was actually working the entire time.
No, but like actually, someone make like a brief chat with everyone on it.
I did!
Yeah.
Don't kind of sus, it's on IG.
No.
He's Pug's ID.
That's it.
Follow me on Reddit. What's up?
These.
Connor, you in it. You just need a few more people. Like, I'll put
No, don't do it on Instagram, do it on like messages.
messages.
Yeah.
Put me in. What's your number?
I already have an iPod.
Bro. Yes, jeez, you just met him. Chill.
Got it.
Take him on a date.
Okay. Who plays Among Us during the break? I already have you.
Do you have my number?
I don't want to have your number. What's your number?
226.
Give me a second.
Oh, it's a 226 number.
Oh.
I'm kidding. Okay, we go. 226.
792.
Oh,
792.
9319.
Put this on backwards.
9319. Oh, 19.
Oh, wait.
Hey, you want to just tell me what your shapes are?
What? Oh, my ships?
Yeah.
I thought you said sheets.
I want to take an X-ray thing so I can like figure out what it means.
Oscar.
Yeah?
You have a phone number?
I do, yeah. I don't know if my phone can do like a group message thing.
Is it Samsung?
I don't know. Probably.
We'll try.
No, like the. Can you read mix? Like Samsung and iPhone?
You guys all have iPhones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I changed to iPhone.
I don't have an iPhone, so I don't know if it would work.
It might work.
Alright,
Try.
well.
What's your
It
number?
might work, yeah.
Okay, there we go. That should work. 226
226
606
606
4991.
4991.
I've never used this before. Let's see if it works.
I don't think it is working, Oscar. There's just a little pinwheel next to your name, but I tried to add you.
Yeah. I'm not getting anything.
Rats.
So you're in the age stuff though, so like.
But my phone is really weird. I can't people can't send me like photos and stuff.
I know, yeah, exactly. That's why I choose iPhone 8, because. Who's the guy that made the Apple again? Steve
I
Jobs?
did not mean to
Jeff
face
Bezos?
call everyone.
Who's the guy
Let's just
again?
ignore that.
Join FaceTime call. No.
Okay, sent it. Among Us.
No, Sam, that's not how you spell it.
No, I got it. What? Stop.
Cool. There's a magnifying glass built into this. Oh, I wish I had this earlier.
It's like that, Sam.
Oh.
Wait, who's everyone's number?
Who ends with 5471?
Who's 226 That's me.
Alright.
Oh, shoot, wait.
Why is mine not sideways?
Who's 226
Everyone just say
It's me.
I might have
It's me.
Oh, you.
Yeah.
497. It's me.
Saw it in the chat, so
Okay.
cannot remember. It's really fast.
Wait, who's 226868? It doesn't matter, but I can't
Oh,
find
that's
it.
me.
So,
Yo, who's 226-929?
I'm going to talk a little bit here about the variety of flowers that are available out there. It's a crazy amount of variety. So here's one right here. Sticks right here. Let's see if we can get this in focus for you.
Hey, bro.
Who's 792?
Oh, beautiful.
It's you.
Jim, are you 9 to 9?
Oops. Okay. So let's take a look at that. So here on this flower, you can really clearly see, this is a perfect flower, by the way. This is a great example of a perfect flower. Perfect flower is one that has both male and female organs on it. Okay? So if you want to follow along with the thing in your textbook, which you guys are going to do in a minute, you're going to take a look at your flowers on your own here. And can someone just give me the page reference that it says on there?
598.
590. Thank you. So there's your example flower right there that has all the structures identified for you. And so if you look on there, you can see the carpel. So the carpel is actually this part right in the center. It's sometimes the carpel is like a long, thin projection that goes up inside the flower, and sometimes it's just like a bulb that's sitting in the middle of the flower. So this is the carpel on here, and the stigma is the part right at the very top. It's like a sticky part. It doesn't really feel that sticky to you, but it's very sticky to pollen. So the stigma up there is sticky to pollen, and if pollen falls on it or is brought by an insect, it'll stick, it'll go down the tube inside, and then eventually inside of the ovary, or inside where the female reproductive cells, the gametes, are located, they're going to combine together with the DNA from the pollen that lands on it, and then they're going to form into a seed pod. So the entire, I have an example, a really good example of a seed pod here. So this right here is a seed pod. So you can see that there was a flower on top, right there. So that has all of these sort of like burnt out parts of the flower that used to exist on top. And that ovule has swollen up and turned into a fruit. And so if you look inside the ovule, there's going to be a number of, or ovules, the ovary. If you look inside the ovary, which this is now the ovary, you can see a bunch of ovules inside that have turned into seeds, because now they're not two gametes anymore, they form the zygote. Male and female sex cells have come together here to form a 2N seed, which is inside of there. Some of these ovaries only contain a single seed, and some of them have a whole bunch of seeds inside. But anything that was formerly an ovary and has now become sort of a storage for seeds, we call that a fruit. So it doesn't, I mean, this isn't really a great fruit. Like, you wouldn't want to eat this. I don't think it's probably toxic for humans anyway, but
Should we test it?
I wouldn't. But another example, like here's another example. This is from a different species out there. You probably wouldn't want to eat that thing, but that's a fruit, okay? So that contains some ovaries inside. Question?
So what can eat that?
Oh, probably lots of animals. Squirrels, I would guess. I would say your digestive system would have a really hard time with that. But anyway, I got a lot of variety. If people want to like come by and have a look at this at any point, you guys have your own flowers as well. What you're doing right now is you're going to go through the book and see if you can find all of the different characteristics of this perfect flower on your flower. Keeping in mind that some of yours are only going to have male parts on them. Some of your flowers are only going to have female parts, because not every plant produces perfect flowers that has male and female components, like that yellow one that we were just looking at. So this is a perfect flower. The male component is this component right here. Okay, and then there's pollen producing at the end. They're separated for a reason. Why would you want to keep your pollen separate from the other part? And not just like put them right on top of each other? What do you not want to do in sexual reproduction? What do you think?
Combine the same sets of DNA.
Right, you don't want to self-fertilize, right? So most plants have some system for preventing accidental self-fertilization. In this case, they're physically keeping them in separate locations in the flower, so hopefully an insect's going to come by, grab some of its pollen without using that same pollen to pollinate itself, ideally. It does happen, self-fertilization happens in plants fairly frequently, but they are trying to avoid it. So that's one of the mechanisms that's at play here, and that would be why you wouldn't keep a perfect flower on the plant. Some plants don't make perfect flowers with male and female parts to keep their gametes separate. Okay, so I'm gonna let you use your flowers that you've just collected. Same for the people at home. Use your flowers that you've collected and go through the information on there and see if you can identify all of the different structures. Okay, you guys can get started on that.